This video is brought to you by Squarespace. More about Squarespace later in the video.
Hands-on stability. I'm not even touching. No autopilot.
By following just 2 or 3 simple principles, you can make almost anything fly. It may not set any world records, but it will fly. From this 8 foot by 4 foot wall insulation panel to an SR-71 to a jet with a tail in front of the wing, the air don't care as long as you follow a few core rules. I was re-watching some of the late Sam Shepard's videos the other day and came across this flying door video. You should definitely check it out. It got me thinking about how to boil down the unifying principles that make anything fly into the shortest list possible. If you are new to aviation, you may see a Piaggio Avanti, a B-2 stealth bomber, and your everyday airliner and wonder how 3 aircraft that couldn't look more different possibly all fly exceptionally well. Throw up your hands and say this is all too complicated. But a few minutes from now, if you are new to aircraft, you will never look at them the same again, and they will look a little less mysterious. Also, I won't be talking about helicopters. They don't really fly, the ground just repels them because they are so aesthetically challenged. An object that can sustain flight, i.e., not a rocket on a ballistic trajectory, is defined in simplest terms by these 3 characteristics: a neutral point, a center of gravity, and a restoring force. Add some directional stability such as a rudder, and that is literally it. Once you know how they relate, you can make almost anything fly. The neutral point of an aircraft is the point on the aircraft where all the aerodynamic forces are balanced. The center of gravity is the point on the aircraft where all the mass is balanced. Without going into the why, let me show you how this works. So we take the plane here that was at the beginning of the video, and we imagine that it's going to the right. This is a side view, this is a top view. Here on the back we have our restoring force. The neutral point of the aircraft is going to be about 1/4 of the way from the leading edge of the wing, okay? So the neutral point is going to be along this line. For the system to be stable, the center of gravity needs to be in front of that neutral point, okay? Unless you have a computer flying the system that can react super quickly. Now on this system here, I have no restoring force drawn in. So if this were to be progressing laterally, it would just progress in a ballistic trajectory, much like a rocket. If I take this restoring force, which is the back quarter of the wing in this case, and I give it a little bit of up deflection, as the air comes over the wing, it deflects off of that elevator. We would call that the elevator or the elevon, whatever you're flying. It's going to push the rear end down and bring the nose up. This is a dynamically stable system that can easily be flown without the aid of a computer. All that is very fascinating, but how do I apply this and actually make my own airplane that will fly the first time? My local home improvement store seems to be my main material supplier these days for projects, and this one was no different. It was off to Lowe's to get some foam, duct tape, and lumber. First up was making an 8 foot by 4 feet sheet of foam fly. In case you are wondering, there were no computers involved at any point in this process. It actually does work, just as illustrated. Also, you can see we weren't really addressing structural requirements. We took a "I hope this is enough" approach in that area. For the flying insulation panel, I first created the restoring force by cutting out the elevons on the rear of the wing. They were faced with duct tape and then attached back onto the wing. After adding rudders for directional stability, I cut out some area for the motor and propeller. This wasn't absolutely necessary, but by moving the motor towards the nose, it certainly made it easier for the aircraft to balance. If you aren't aware of eCalc, definitely check it out. I used it to pick from the motors and batteries I had on hand for the aircraft in this video. The pot on the nose was only as big as it needed to be to get the battery far enough forward for the aircraft balance, which I guessed to be about 9 inches from the leading edge of the wing based on experience. This was about 3 inches in front of the 25% of chord neutral point as outlined earlier in the video.
The jankiest plane is the best one. Oh, the camera.
To demonstrate for you how things fly, I didn't want to start with a complex shape like this SR-71. I wanted to start with this giant Squarespace. Squarespace makes everything easier. I am sharing my next venture with the aviation community soon, and Squarespace is the perfect vehicle for this next chapter. Life is busy, and while I'd like to know how to code, that is probably one skill I will have to forego. Squarespace makes it easy for you to design a professional website without knowing how to code for yourself or needing to hire a web designer. With their easy-to-use templates and intuitive editing tools, even a complete novice can build a great website to get their message out to the world, create an online website to sell their products, or use the included video studio to post original content, you name it. You can also set up your domain and web address through Squarespace. Squarespace has the easiest and the best tools for setting up a website no matter what your goals are. Sponsors really keep the channel going, and supporting the sponsor helps a lot. Do you need your own website or domain? Head to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use this URL on the screen or the link in the description to save 10% of your first purchase of a website or domain. Now on to a more complex shape like the SR-71. How do you find the right center of gravity on a shape like that without a computer? Pretty easy, actually. All I needed to do was to make a little model that I could toss around out of foam board that had the same shape as the large model. I put in a little up trim on the elevons as a restoring force, and after throwing it around the workshop a few times and adding a few pennies to the nose, I had a pretty good starting point for balancing the big model. Good enough to keep me from wrecking it on the first throw anyway. The SR-71 was built pretty much the same way as the first plane, using just sheet insulation foam, Gorilla Glue, and duct tape. This model would need more speed than the last one to fly, so I used a motor and prop that would give me just that. It flew right off with only a little down trim. No crashing needed to get it working. Because the wing is so narrow compared to the length of the plane, it rolls very quickly. I nearly did the plane in when I tried some high alpha maneuvers, but got lucky and kept it in one piece. Here is some gratuitous footage just tooling around and entertaining some locals.
This is a real plane. So that plane just flies. This plane flies amazing.
Also with me that day was Edelweiss, one of my better creations, to represent the conventional wing and tail aircraft most are familiar with.
This is a real airplane, a real UAV, a real drone, the real deal.
The wing provides the lift, the tail pushes the rear downwards to provide the restoring force, and the center of gravity is a bit in front of the neutral point. This one was designed in the computer, and consequently it can provide much higher performance. But it still follows the exact same principles to work. Click the link on the screen to see its sister in action. Let's do one more airplane shape that seems tricky but is actually just as easy to get right. Remember the first powered plane, the 1903 Wright Flyer? What about these planes here? And this Swedish fighter jet? They all have the horizontal tail in front of the wing. How does that work? Well, pretty much the same actually. It is simply that the restoring force is now in front of the center of gravity, and instead of pushing the tail down, it is lifting the nose up. Since this video isn't about how to power your aircraft, I made a simple glider version of the fighter jet. It didn't have a great glide as you would expect, but it was very stable.
Okay, let's see if I can thread the needle. So even though it's a low wing, the wing is on the bottom, and I have all this mass, these cameras on top, this Delta planform is still super stable. It has like a lot of dihedral, as if it was an upper wing airplane. It's very stable. I say that, so it better work the way I said. Too much nose weight. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that was the last flight. It broke in half.
It was a lot of fun to go back to the basics and ditch the computer for a while on this project. The computer allows for much higher performance aircraft, and that is where I like to spend my time, but getting these wild shapes to fly with no extra help, just the essentials, was really enjoyable. I hope this gives you more confidence to go make your own plane and experiment a little while you are at it. And if you enjoyed this video, you may enjoy one of these videos on the left of your screen.